one of the beauties of switching to a cloud approach is the fact that when you need to burst out and get more capacity, then it's available, but you don't have to pay for that the whole year.
It was funny that the actual steps were this exact same ones you would use to actually enter into a cloud environment.
Linthicum in particular, when he was challenged by the Leaf Cloud guy.
If that's still the case after a number of years, I would put that to incompetence of who's actually running the cloud. Hello and welcome to the Cloud Therapist channel. I'm Richard Simon. This is going to be a review of the Clouded Summit, which was held recently in London. Now, for those not familiar with Clouded, we will offer details as we go along, I promise. So all will be revealed. But first, I actually want to introduce and welcome David Terrar to the channel. So David, how are you doing?
Doing great today. Thanks for having me on, Richard.
Fantastic. So David, for those folks who don't know who you are, please, can you give us a sort of a quick background on yourself?
Okay, I'm the CEO of a not-for-profit trade body called the Tech Industry Forum Limited that I've started, kind of tech trade body of choice.
Right, interesting. So where would be the best place to kind of find you? Is like website, LinkedIn? What's the best place?
If you go to techindustryforum.org, that redirects to cloudindustryforum.org.
Did you know that 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed yet to this channel? Come on, guys, we can do better, surely. So please hit subscribe and the notification bell. It costs nothing, but it really helps me to keep making more videos for you. All right, back to the therapy session. Right, excellent. Okay. All right, so with that intro in place, let's get cracking because we have lots to go through, hopefully. So first of all, let's kind of maybe just settle a bit of a background and sort of setting the scene on the Clouded Summits. So the Clouded Summit, as I said, was held in London recently. It's organized by a company called Dark Matter and sponsored by HPE. Yeah, I think they were the only sponsor this time around. David, was that correct?
It looked that way, yes. Just
right.
Then, yeah.
Okay. So Dark Matter have been putting out lots of sort of series and documentaries on cloud computing, and generally have kind of been maybe coming in from a sort of a skeptical point of view and kind of questioning the technology a little bit. So certainly kind of a lot of the content has kind of declared war a little bit on cloud. Hence my T-shirt for today as well, to indicate that. But I guess this was a follow-up to the Clouded documentary, which they did, I think, a couple of years ago now. I've actually done a review of that on the Cloud Therapist channel. So if you actually want to check that out, the description will be in the or the link will be in the description of this video.
Cloud Industry Forum actually co-hosted the kind of like the London launch session. I think they launched it a few different places, but we actually co-hosted the first London event where they kind of explained the documentary for the first time. Okay,
right. There is also a Clouded 2 documentary as well. So I guess this kind of the Clouded Summit is a follow-up to the second of the Clouded documentaries. Again, we will be reviewing Clouded 2 at some point on the channel, so we'll see how that goes. We'll do a review hopefully before the year is out. So I think we'll try and maybe catch that at that point. Now on the I just do a little bit of digging around the sort of the Dark Matter YouTube channel, and there is a whole bunch of other stuff on there. There's a cybercrime documentary which is sponsored by McAfee and Dell, apparently. So that's kind of talking about when you get organizations get hacked and data is held to ransom and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I don't know kind of the approach that Dark Matter is taking here, but certainly from the sponsorship, I think we can probably kind of tell why they're going in the particular direction that they are going. the ironic thing I think that I found, and I don't know about you, David, is just kind of just touching that and expanding on the background for for our audience a little bit, is that a number of cloud native and public cloud and even open source vendors have actually got involved in in these documentaries as well, and certainly have presented I think in previous meetups that Dark Matter has organized. So they have those. I think they had a couple. The last one was back in July, I believe. It's called Clad Anonymous Meetup. And people like Control Plane and Open UK were there. So I find that a little bit ironic that we're kind of talking about sort of stuff that's not necessarily positive about cloud, but then you actually have sort of cloud vendors and what have it turning up for these meetups and documentaries and so on.
It's interesting because I think that I mean I understand about kind of like you want to make things kind of controversial
yes,
but it almost feels like they talk of cloud as if there's some sort of conspiracy going on and talk in terms of whistleblowers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then all the usual suspects which we've I've pointed out to you as well. I think we're also on there as well. So David, I'm going to butcher his name here now. David Hannemeyer Hansen, DHH from 37 Signals.
Oh yes.
Also has a documentary on there and kind of. But I'm sure me butchering his name is the last of his worries. But he's actually on the Dark Matter YouTube channel as well. There's like a 10-minute something sort of talk with him as well. I've not actually watched that, so that will be an interesting one maybe to watch at that point. So he's famous for, or 37 Signals is kind of famous for being one of the two so-called urban legend stories about cloud repatriation. That's kind of on there as well. But anyway, so all of that is kind of the background, and we're gonna hopefully, like I said, cover the Cloud Summit with David today. So let's get cracking with that review. So first thing was the sort of the venue where the summit was, David, kind of the format and the agenda. What was kind of just your overall take of the atmosphere as you walked in?
Well, I mean, it's actually it's a great venue. One Moorgate Place. Actually, it's the main kind of facilities of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. From about 2006 to 2013-14, they were in another life my biggest customer. We actually provided an online something called ION, the ICAEW online network, to get all of the accountants into blogging and using message boards and the like, with a particular platform that we partnered with called WordFrame. So lovely facilities, and the actual lecture hall that they were using, every chair had its own microphone, so it was very easy to get the discussion going, and I think that added to the thing. I mean, I didn't talk to enough people, but it felt much more like a kind of like an audience of insiders talking about the cloud, rather than end user customers coming along to find out about stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly a lot of sort of what I would maybe call as sort of alternative cloud vendors in the audience as well. So we did have a conversation with those. But yeah, I like the kind of the the theater and the lecture style sort of hall that they had. Certainly, like I said, as you said, rather, the microphones on each seat were helpful and encouraged maybe people to click the button and and ask a question and give some feedback. Now, I did pick up on the Dark Matter website. They had a FAQ page, an FAQ page. And it said, how involved, one of the questions was, how involved are the sponsors in the narrative development? So this was quite an interesting one. And the response was, who we collaborate with is extremely important to us. We are selective with our sponsors, only partnering with those that are committed to sharing an honest, balanced narrative. I won't go through the rest of it, but I'll provide some links to that. But again, I think straight away that kind of didn't really, sit well with me, because I as we will probably talk about later, we'll conclude that I certainly didn't feel it was a kind of a balanced approach to the whole thing. But that was just something from the website, which I thought was interesting to quote. Now, we also found quite puzzling was the fact that the actual agenda, although you fantastically managed to get hold of it before the actual summit, it actually never got released. So we never knew who was going to present. We just kind of knew it was like a 9 to 5 or something, sort of summit, but we didn't really know. But you managed to grab hold of the agenda early on, or a couple of days before, or something, which is fantastic.
I called Daniel up and I said, I'm obviously I'm being stupid here. I can't find the agenda.
Where's the agenda? Yeah.
And he said, well, it's because we haven't published one. And he immediately sent me one, which was good.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, and we'll run through that in a minute. I already knew that David Linthicum was actually going to be on. Yeah. So David Linthicum is I think he's ex Deloitte. He's kind of doing his own thing now. Quite prolific in terms of writing and posting stuff on LinkedIn and other places. So I knew that David Linthicum was on, and I've connected with David a few years ago. I think we did the same live stream together. He was on, and I was on as well, and we kind of we were part of that, I guess, as part of that particular live stream. So yes, I knew David was on. I knew that he was going to come on and do a keynote, which indeed he did do the keynote. But the impression that I got initially, and I don't know why, maybe I was just too giddy and excited that I was going to actually interact with David, beyond the sort of the other LinkedIn stuff and whatever interfaces that I have with him. I thought he was actually going to be there in person. I thought, oh great, it'll be an opportunity to actually meet David in person for the first time, because I don't think he's actually been on any sort of KubeCons or any of these sort of other conferences, what have you. So I've not had the chance to actually meet him. Sadly, that was not the case. He was actually he did it remotely from Virginia. I think he's based in Virginia in the US. But anyway, so the agenda, David Linthicum, who's an AI and cloud thought leader. He did the keynote, which is called The Cloud Exit Reality. A lady called Alison McIntyre from Capgemini was on. I think her talk was around cloud FinOps. Mark, again, I'm going to butcher some surnames here. Mark Bjornsgaard, I think he was from Deep Green Tech. He did 4 wicked data center sustainability problems. Pablo Cersosimo, I think. Apologies again if I'm getting all of this wrong. He's from the UN, and he did something called presented on something called Digital is Liquid. Mark Butcher from Positive Cloud. He did the BS of the highest order. That was the title of his talk. Carl Havard from Nscale was talking about how to approach the era of generative AI. And then they sort of finished off with a fireside chat, which I think had all the presenters except for David Linthicum. I think he'd kind of left by that point. So, and there was an introduction from Daniel, as you said, as well, to the to that. He did a few slides and just kind of set the scene. One of the things I picked up on his slide was when he said the dark carnival of cloud. That was one of the slides that he had on, which I thought was a bit, I don't know. It was kind of, I guess he was trying to maybe set the scene, but again, it was that kind of, sort of film style sort of approach to, to setting the atmosphere to the whole thing, as you said earlier, David.
Another thing he said was I think there was a sense like, does cloud cost the earth? And obviously one of the things we're going to talk about is cloud and sustainability and that kind of thing. But I mean, it's technology that we're talking about. We're all using much more technology and software and stuff that runs in data centers and consumes a lot of power and generates a lot of heat.
Yes.
And needs cooling and the like. But it's but he specifically kind of aims it towards, is cloud costing us the earth?
Yeah, and we will touch on that. I think some of the certainly the content that was presented kind of really revealed that as we went through. Okay, so so David Linthicum was on first. As we said, he did the keynotes, international AI, cloud and thought leader and author as well. and his presentation was the cloud exit rate. I think David has kind of been a little bit hostile towards that sort of cloud space and everything else in his publications and some of the sort of thought leadership stuff that he puts out. But I picked up on a few notes, and we'll maybe just kind of go through those together. So one of the slides was called, I think, cost optimization strategies. Now, he had this as a sort of a table, a very simple table, where he had sort of the cloud data center and maybe even hybrid sort of solutions on one side. Then kind of he demonstrated the initial cost, the long-term cost, and the flexibility of those solutions. So for cloud, he had it as low, high, and high. So low initial cost, high long-term cost, and then high flexibility. For data center, he had it as high initial cost, low long-term cost, and then flexibility as, or medium as flexibility. I won't bother with a hybrid one, but those are kind of, I guess, the two different ones there. Now, in the data center sort of, having long-term costs are, definitely low or can be low, as he indicated in the chart for long-term costs. But, that's because the technology really is out of date in a few years' time. You're no longer really using the latest sort of and greatest of that. And surely that's one of the ideas of, being in the clouds, that you can actually be on, riding the latest technology and actually even not worry about necessarily the text and specs, because you're sort of, abstracted from that type of stuff that you used to worry about in the data center. Oh, my servers are 3 years old, they're 5 years old, whatever. I need to renew. I need to go and buy the latest Intel servers and what have you. After a few years, those servers are essentially worthless. When you decommission them after 3 years to 5 years, nobody wants those anymore. So I don't know, the long-term cost really, I think, of sort of is really kind of that sort of depreciation that will happen. And as far as sort of innovation is concerned, that's non-existent with something like that, because the technology is out of date. Even technology in things like SANs and stuff like that, and if you're kind of investing in a SAN or an AS device, those move even quicker. Those are probably a 2-year shelf life in a 3-year max, and then something else comes up which is even bigger, faster, whatever, cheaper, whatever. So I didn't necessarily agree that the long-term costs or the reason I think that he put long-term costs in there as being low for the data center was not necessarily the reasons I would agree with.
Do you know, there are lots of angles to this, but if I take something out of a long ago in history, when I was an IBM sales guy, one of my customers was the Cambridge Exam Board.
Yeah,
and the hardware I sold them, that they had to have the capacity for their two kind of peak points in the year, with the two kind of exam cycles, and so they needed something that was powerful enough to handle those two spikes, and not for the rest of the year. And so you've actually, if you're doing it all yourself, you've got a potential utilization problem, because you've got to handle your maximum peaks. And one of the beauties of switching to a cloud approach rather than having your own servers is the fact that when you need to burst out and get more capacity, then it's available, but you don't have to pay for that the whole year.
Yeah, and then just to pick up on the other item on there, which was he put the cloud's long-term costs as being high, and I didn't really know what this was based on. Was it based on sort of cloud repatriation or cloud economics? Because that's not really, that approach is not inherent with cloud. I would put it, if that's still the case after a number of years, I would put that to incompetence of who's actually running the cloud and not necessarily the technology itself.
No, I totally agree with you, and it's kind of if I'm running it in my own data center, okay, I need to have the expertise of running a data center. I need to worry about the power. I need to worry about the space that I'm using up. I need to, I've got to become an expert at running a data center.
Yeah,
And so part of the beauties of using a cloud approach, or letting your partner have all that expertise and worry about it, and actually share those resources with other customers. It's part of the economics that make cloud sensible.
yeah,
And it's, yeah, and you're right. It's almost as if there's this saying that there's always a high cost of continuously running it. It's more to do with I got my planning wrong, and maybe I'm actually using stuff that I don't need to use because I haven't actually done the
exactly.
optimization and look at the efficiencies that I ought to be
Yeah,
doing.
and we also talk about cloud as being a journey. So you don't, we've often talked about lifting and shifting kind of, either out of desperation or because of certain circumstances. But we've also said that we need to move on from that and actually optimize into the cloud and become more cloud native and so on. So
Yeah.
an analogy that I had was when your bank keeps increasing the charges for the services that they offer you. Surely you don't stay with the same bank. You would probably look to go to at least a different account, if not maybe a completely different bank, to mitigate those sort of extra charges. But you would opt to change banks. You don't withdraw all your money and stuff it in your mattress, which is essentially what I think the cloud repatriation is. It's taking your money out of the bank because the bank has increased their charges for certain services that you use, and now you're saying, no, I'm never going to use banking again. I'm going to take all my money out and just stuff it in my mattress and save my money that way. That's cloud repatriation. And I think that's, throwing the baby with the bathwater kind of approach. And I don't think that's the right way to approach, especially, like I said, if you are not optimized in the cloud.
No, and two things. I mean, I think the when Lincoln was talking about optimization and efficiency and that kind of thing, that's crucially important, and that's a really good
Yeah.
kind of point. But the other side of this is that there's plenty of choice around. I mean, one of my books back here, the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Usually, in any marketplace for any product, there's maybe one kind of market leader and a second and sometimes a third. So there's a Coke and there's a Pepsi,
Yeah.
and we've actually got three big players, but then we've got lots of smaller players,
Yes.
and that's the I mean. People always talk about vendor lock-in and that kind of thing. I mean, if you've approached the thing right, it ought to be relatively straightforward for you to switch banks, like you were saying, to actually shift your applications to a different, better cloud provider that's going to give you the more cost-effective approach you need.
Yeah.
So but that's just the market. That's normal, and it's, for me, it's great that there are dozens of other medium and smaller cloud providers which give us choice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the other slides kind of talked about practical steps for a cloud exit. So clearly, it was kind of David was heading in that direction.
Mm.
Um, you know,
One of the,
but
you were saying about cost. One of the things you remember,
yeah,
there's one point right towards the end of his presentation where he actually talked about on-premise versus cloud as being
yes,
a tenfold difference.
yes. I think I picked up. I'm not sure I have any notes on it, but this particular one that I picked up on, the practical steps for a cloud exit slide.
Oh, yeah,
Um, it was funny that the actual steps were this exact same ones you would use to actually enter into a cloud environment. So assessment, planning, implementation, and
yeah,
optimization, which is the bit that we were just
yeah.
talking about. So I found that quite amusing. There was another one called organizational considerations. So it was talking about, well, and you mentioned, I think you touched on it earlier. We said, well, you just have to, train your people. You have to do some training when you do cloud repatriation to come back to the, into the data center. So let me get this straight. You've got DevOps engineers, and now you're going to teach them VMware vSphere, right? Is that the idea? And how a SAN works and how to hot swap a hard drive in the data center or something? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Um,
It's
yeah.
you know it's a choice. I mean, if you
Yeah.
decide that you're going to run your own data center and you need to build up that expertise, great. But
Yeah.
there are other routes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just kind of came across another slide, I think said something like, start your cloud exit journey today, as if it's kind of, like an invitation to a barbecue on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah, you can just start it right now. It's that easy. And then I think, yeah, he moved on to the other ones, which were kind of a little bit more detail as well. So exiting the cloud slide, you were kind of talking a little bit more about sort of, moving. I think the point for me on that slide was that this kind of, point about, moving out of probably a very optimized data center, the hyperscalers data center, back to what is arguably something less efficient in your own data center. I mean, there's nothing more, regardless of how bad they are in terms of energy efficiency and not being green and what have you, but surely they're probably running at their best costs in a hyperscale data center versus you and I building, or creating a data center of our own for our own business.
And they've probably got significantly better utilization of all of that processing power that
Yeah.
because they're sharing it amongst lots of customers.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So kind of, it just seemed to be like a trade-off between, okay, we're not going to pay that money, in being in a hyperscaler or being in a public cloud, but we're happy to run it in our own data center because the running, or at least the workloads and the assets are cheaper, but we're not really caring too much about the planet because we're never going to run our data center as efficiently as a hyperscaler would do. So this started, I think, this split between kind of, cloud is bad in terms of the costs and what have you, versus which I think where the summit really kind of started going later, which was, data centers are bad because of the pollution, because they're not green enough, which I think is where, we started kind of going down the, the not the cost saving, but the sustainability and green ops approach.
And there was loads of great content in the summit around that topic, and it's crucially important. Crucially important.
Yeah, and like I said, there's kind of no guarantee that kind of moving back to the data center is really going to be any greener for you, none whatsoever. I didn't really see, or I've not seen really anything that's kind of guarantees that. There was another slide which was called the hidden costs of cloud computing. So this was talking about energy consumption. I said cloud data centers consume enormous amounts of electricity. Well, yeah, they do, but we're not individually burdened about the consumption of the electricity. That's down to the hyperscalers to do that. And yes, we pay for for the utility of that, for the utilization of that, but we're not individually burdened with the costs of that, right? We pay for the utilization, which I'm sure they take into account energy and consumption and everything else, and then they bill us for for the utilization. But it just kind of sounded like it was energy consumption is a problem, and because they use up a lot of electricity. Well, yeah, they will do that, but because we're collecting everything into one place versus having multiples of those utilities, multiples of those devices and equipment and things like that. And as I said earlier, they're not optimized. They're not as optimized as the hyperscalers.
No, and that's that's the crucial point. I mean, we're all using more technology. We're all using more data. We're all doing more stuff. But whether that the processing power to run those applications is sitting in my own data center with my own people running it versus a hyperscaler or one of the other cloud providers, I'm now going to have to be the expert on sustainability and run my data center in as most efficient way as possible. have I got the time to do that? I mean, some organizations definitely will, but there's, as you rightly say, when you go to a cloud provider, whether it's a medium or small one, or one of the large hyperscalers, they're all about running their data center more efficiently, getting better utilization. And so for the power that they're giving us, they're going to be potentially using less energy than if you did it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's all about, I'm going to pay for someone else to worry about that problem.
Yeah, exactly, which is what I said. It's we are paying for that, but the whole aspect of running it as efficiently as possible, making it as green as possible, whenever possible, that is the whole kind of what we're passing on to the hyperscaler to take care of on our behalf. Right.
And the good cloud providers, I mean, one of my members is OVH Cloud. They have an absolutely fantastic story on sustainability in terms of, that when they're building a new data center, they don't build it from scratch. They go and buy an existing building and repurpose it,
right.
And then every kind of component in what they do, they think of it in terms of sustainability. At the end of life of a processor, they don't throw it away and scrap it. They actually think, can this be repurposed for some other job?
Yes.
Or if it can't be repurposed, then we sell it on the market so someone else gets use from it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the good companies have that mentality where they're actually thinking about sustainability holistically across the whole of what they do.
Yeah, it's a full sort of chain of custody, or whatever you want to call it, kind of thing, right? And I think on the same slide, the energy consumption, as we said, of these hyperscale data centers is going to be infinitely more efficient than like I said, a whole bunch of enterprises running a whole bunch of their own data centers. I just kind of found those arguments quite weak. I didn't see a lot of sort of backing to the claims made, and the evidence that was there was at best circumstantial. Really, I didn't really see a lot of kind of detail on that.
And they're talking in terms of cloud repatriation, and they've got 37 signals as a story, and they've got the
Amazon Prime.
The Amazon Prime, but it's not all of Amazon Prime. It's just one piece of it, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's Amazon Prime Video, and it's one app or something.
Yeah. And so I don't Cloud Industry Forum does research. Our annual research report that came out in March this year. Interestingly, it's the first time that all of the respondents to the survey actually said we're using cloud. There's been a kind of like a slowly decreasing percentage of I'm staying on premise.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're not talking about every application, even if it's maybe only using cloud for email or whatever. But cloud's a given. Every organization we surveyed is using cloud, and then there's a kind of interesting split. 49% of them said they had a cloud first strategy. 49% of them said a hybrid strategy, and that's the world we're living in, where there's choice, and some organizations can do it on cloud. Some are doing some of it on cloud, and different cloud providers for other things. Do one of the missing pieces from the Clouded Summit event was actually talk about business outcomes. What are we trying to do with this technology? There's a big focus on the technology and the goods and bads of doing it one way versus another, and we disagreed with some of those arguments, but there wasn't enough for me in terms of what's the value I'm getting out of this technology that we're using.
Yeah, I didn't certainly pick up on that, and again, I think the concluding slide kind of said exiting the cloud can lead to significant improvements in sustainability and cost efficiency. But I think this was, and we touched on it earlier briefly, this is the whole point of the shared responsibility model with the public cloud providers. The chart maybe needs to change a little bit to kind of include more details on the infrastructure section to highlight the efficiencies provided by the hyperscalers that outweigh kind of what the individual can do in their own business, in their own data center, as far as sustainability and efficiency is concerned. Maybe we kind of need a revision of that chart that's so prevalent. But certainly, I saw that was kind of the case, and there needed to be a bit more of a balance, but I didn't really see that. Like I said, most of the evidence for me was not sufficient. I didn't see that there was enough, kind of a case really to kind of convince me in regards to cloud repatriation or exiting the cloud center. I think, like I said, it's not necessarily a doubling down, but what you ought to do is actually say, is there, before we kind of make that massive decision of going back to the data center or even a colo or a managed service kind of environment, is there anything else we can do here while we're in the cloud? Can we do some cost optimization? Is there a better way and more efficient way to run some of our workloads and so on? And then that would take it back to the business side of it, because then you're asking the business side, this application of yours, do you really need it 24/7, or can we shut it down between, say, midnight and 6 a.m. when nobody's going to access it? Because if we can do that and build that environment, automate the build for that environment using things like Terraform tools and what have you, automation tools, then we can stand up that environment and tear it down whenever we like. The only thing we maybe have to maintain constantly is the storage, is the backend data of that, but not necessarily the environment. And I know in many Microsoft, Azure, and AWS Summit events that I've attended, customers have been rolled onto the stage, and they've all stood there and said, we're completely serverless, top to bottom. We can, website, order taking, invoicing, customer, whatever, everything that we do is serverless.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, as a startup today, and if you want to be kind of, born you are sort of born in the cloud, and most likely you will be, that is the way to be, really. And that's kind of the, those types of efficiencies that the more traditional, enterprises can actually strive towards as well.
I totally agree, and it's over the years with all sorts of different types of technology, it's always been a struggle to get customers that I've been talking to actually focus on the value proposition that they're going to get out of whatever the application is versus just worrying about the costs. And we've got to get that shift from costs to business value, particularly in what's coming next in technology.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so the next presentation was from Alison McIntyre from Capgemini. I don't know about you, but I really struggled to hear her during the presentation. I think she wasn't very close enough to the microphone or something. So I was finding, and maybe I'm just kind of, my ears are sort of going a little bit. My hearing is going or something. But I really struggled to hear what she was saying. I think she talked about, sort of, there were a number of statistics from a Flexera State of the Cloud report from last year that she talked about. I think 32% of cloud spend is a waste. I'm not really surprised that, you'd get that sort of information from a Flexera report, because they're kind of in that FinOps space. So they'd obviously be aiming for, that type of scary stats, as I would call them. And because of, like I said, I couldn't hear her very well. I have to say I've switched off for the rest of the presentation.
I think that sort of 32%, 30%. There's a couple of surveys that the FinOps experts point to, and it's irrefutable that that's the case for a lot of kind of enterprise customers. But I think that's more to do with not planning the way they went into cloud as well as they could, and not actually doing the optimization and finding about the fact that actually there's all these things they've got switched on which they don't need. And obviously part of the problem with that is the complexity of the cloud platforms that we've got now, because there are so many extra things that have been added and new stuff that's been added, and so so many new features and things. There's quite a challenge to actually manage all that and within that manage the cost of it.
Exactly.
I think it's it's all to do if you get your planning right, and you go into the cloud, in a good way, you're going to avoid that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, and again, I don't know how sort of accurate that report is, because Flexera is in that FinOps space. I know of the company, so kind of quoting figures from them, I kind of expect them to be coming from their point of view.
And Alison also kind of like took us a bit into the AI side of things. I mean, one of the things she said was that AI is a bit like taking a jumbo jet to the shops.
Okay.
I
didn't hear that bit. So,
but I mean, and it's almost, I mean, that's kind of like highlighting the fact that we have to, clearly when, I mean, I'd say, 2007 was the point that we actually started using the cloud term in anger. There was stuff that we did before then with software as a service and the like, that was cloud type stuff going back into the 90s. But 2007 was the point when, AWS was out, and people actually started using the cloud computing term on a regular basis, and enterprises started to think about it and see how they went about the challenge. But that 30% waste problem highlights the fact that not everyone went into it in a controlled and sensible fashion. There's a lot of kind of lift and shift. I'm going into cloud and it's going to save me some money, when maybe they should have actually looked at that application estate and done some of it a different way. And we have to make sure that we don't make the same kinds of mistakes when we move into using artificial intelligence on top of what we've got. So I think there's some lessons that we've learned from getting some of the cloud stuff wrong, that we have to make sure we don't get wrong in the AI rollout.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't know how Flexera is, like I said, kind of generated their report. I don't know what cloud environments they looked at, but and again, it's finding something like that doesn't necessarily mean that there's no efficiencies to be made, and that's actually sort of optimally having the environment as efficient and optimized as possible. And then Flexera goes in and says, but there's still another 32% of waste there, despite all your efforts. So I don't know if that was the case. I think, like I said, it's probably the more lift and shift, low hanging fruit, kind of targets that they maybe looked at in that report. And we won't know, of course, the details of that.
I mean, the FinOps topic is an important topic, particularly for some companies. So it's the stuff that was difficult to hear was there was some good messages coming out from there.
Yeah. Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. Okay, shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mark Bjornsgaard, sorry about that. But keep butchering these surnames. He was from Deep Green Tech, and his presentation was 4 wicked data center sustainability problems. Now, I think this is where, like I said, a real split started happening in the summit. We were so far kind of almost or skirting around sort of cloud computing. Certainly David's presentation was around that. Maybe Alison kind of touched on it a little bit more, start bringing in AI and so on. But Mark is now just kind of talking data centers. I don't care where your data center is, if it's underwater, on the moon, in a hyperscaler, in your own, building, or, colo, whatever it is, data centers in general. And this was kind of the focus on, sustainability problems in data centers in general. I mean, I've got nothing against it. I'm not going to necessarily argue, with this one, because as I said, the summit started drifting away from, cloud or public cloud, and specifically into kind of more, green and energy consumption and all data centers. So this kind of became the target that was in the crosshairs of the presenter, not just the hyperscalers. What was your thought on that?
Well, I mean, I kind of like enjoyed that content, that whole sequence, because it's a fascinating thing in that we do have an ongoing problem. I mean, the CIOs that I talk to, they've got an awful lot of investment in um, cloud,
Mm.
compute and storage and networking capacity to do the cool things that they're doing. Particularly, if they've got the digital transformation right and they're kind of like using more software and technology to help the business get value and do a good
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And then you add artificial intelligence into the thing, and suddenly you're thinking, good Lord, I might need twice the compute and storage and stuff to do all the
Mm.
things I want to do with AI as well. And
Yeah.
and if we're generating all of this kind of heat from those processes for the planet, AI is coming along and actually accelerating the problem.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean I was quite fascinated by kind of Deep Green's premise that the solution to the climate change problem is actually right there. It's all about um, making sure that your data center is in the right place and you're actually making use of all of the excess energy that the data center produces to do some good for somebody else.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I think it is, like I said, the split started happening in the summit at this point. And
yeah,
then if you look at the green and energy side of it, you're saying you need to your data center wherever it is,
yeah,
even if it's your own. Like I said, we're now talking about all data centers.
yeah.
Your data center needs to be green, and but it's not necessarily addressing the energy side of it. You still need X amount of energy, whether that energy is a green energy or not.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
if you get it out of solar panels, great. If you have to use you know fossil fuels or something, yeah, that's another option. But it wasn't talking about kind of necessarily using less energy. It's just kind of saying it whatever energy used it has to be or should be or ought to be green energy. But it was not necessarily saying about reducing energy. And I think there's a yet another split here where we say, we need the same amount of energy, but needs to be green? Or are we saying, no, you need to use less energy, whether it's green or fossil fuel sourced or whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever generates it, you just need to use less energy versus saying, no, you can use as much energy as you like, even maybe more than you're using at the moment, as long as it's green. So I think that's kind of yet another split down that particular path. Forget the cloud, public cloud and hyperscaler. We've kind of left that behind, that particular path. Now we're down this sort of energy and green sort of utilization or sustainability rather, and sort of an energy. And now we're kind of maybe splintering the energy into another two paths as well. So you
And
must use
interestingly,
less energy, or no, you can use still as much energy as long as it's green.
that's interesting, and actually, the split had begun to happen even before the Deep Green guy got
Yeah,
on
I
stage.
think I think
Because
this was where it hit me anyway, because I was
yeah,
actually
yeah.
halfway asleep through the previous one,
Do you
because I
remember
couldn't hear it.
there was a
And then I
guy?
woke up for this one. I was like, oh, hang on, now we're talking about sustainability and energy, and not public
Yeah,
clouds anymore.
it's true, and there was a guy in the audience, David Kunstam,
Mm.
from one of Deep Green's competitors, Leaf Cloud, who
Oh
actually
yes,
he
yes,
made some really good interjections. Kind of and that's kind of like when that kind of split started to happen.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um,
I
but
think.
I think
Go
oh,
ahead.
you
No,
go
no,
on.
go ahead. Yeah.
I was intrigued by what Deep Green had to say, and the fact that if we started to kind of rethink whether I'm AWS running my cloud infrastructure, or whether I'm with Wasabi or whatever,
Yeah.
those organizations, as well as doing all the kind of cool things that OVH Cloud do in terms of sustainability,
Yeah.
to start getting things right and using less energy. The
Yeah.
idea of actually putting your data center next to a swimming pool, so you heat it with for free with the excess energy, with the energy that's coming from your data center, or you put it next to a housing estate and you're providing free heat to the housing estate. That's it's going to require a lot of rethinking and planning, but it's an intriguing solution to the climate change problem that we're all staring at.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not against any of that sort of, the sustainability and being green and so on. I think I just found it, and this was unfortunately in retrospect, because I would have asked the question otherwise. But in retrospect, I just thought, okay, so when we talk about that, are we saying you must just generally use less energy, or are we saying you can use as much energy, and if not more than you're using at the moment, as long as it's green energy? So that was the thing that occurred to me. The only anecdotal bit that I picked up on that was, I think one of his slides said London is a 1.6 gigawatt distributed supercomputer, and then listed out some of the kind of some of the users anyway, not necessarily all the users. I would say probably households are probably the most guilty of that. Flicking through Netflix documentaries and films and what have you excessively, and recharging phones and so on. So laundry, swimming pools, breweries, heat pumps, hospitals, and so on were amongst all the guilty ones that were listed out. I don't know why you singled those ones out, but there you go. But yeah, it was an interesting anecdotal part that you had.
Intriguing concept.
Indeed. Okay, next one I had even less to think, to consider about, which was the Pablo Cirsosimo's presentation. He was from the UN, and it said digital is liquid. And basically his argument was that data centers, again, in general, not necessarily hyperscaler or just data centers around the world use a lot of fresh water. They need a lot of fresh water. I think he did quote something about ChatGPT requires X amount of liters of water every time it provides an answer or something like that.
Yeah, he did say that.
Yeah, that was kind of the anecdotal bit. But I mean, for me, it was, there was a couple of ironies there. One was that he was actually on Zoom. So, essentially using a cloud to actually do his presentation. So, you should kind of be, sort of eating your own sort of, what's the expression? Eat your own dog food?
Yes.
Is it, or something? Yeah. So you should be eating his own dog food and, and turning up as, in a green way as possible, and actually presenting this presentation in person, not through Zoom, which is based in a public cloud, of course. And then the other one was, well, I'd like to see the UN kind of doing its bidding, without the use of public cloud. And I'd be generous and just give them 6 months. Just don't use public cloud in any of your, facilities and so on to do your bidding, just for 6 months. That's my idea to the UN. But anyway, there you go.
And this is kind of like one of the complication of this is that we've got data centers where they've got air conditioning, and we're using more energy to cool things down, and then we've got better data centers that are using water cooling, and that's good, but then we're using a lot of water. So it's actually highlighting how complex a problem tackling climate change is, and how connected all the different ingredients are.
Yes.
So it's a really tough balancing act that we've got to try and get right in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, exactly. Now the next one I did have a little bit more, I think this was when I started waking up again, was the Mark Butcher presentation, Positive Cloud. So he said the BS of the highest order. I have to say, I really appreciated the honesty in the presentation. There was a lot of kind of what I think he was, he thought were facts that he was quoting in that. In terms of, again, this was data centers overall, not hyperscalers specifically. There was nothing in there that actually said, hyperscalers. He did kind of moan about Microsoft's paper on Azure, kind of, Azure's green credentials. He's actually said these were quote unquote incorrect. So yeah, I mean, good for him. That's great. And he's kind of gone and done the calculations. He found that I think their definition of net zeros wasn't correct and things like that. And then, there was a pushback on AWS's AI workloads sort of reduction in terms of carbon footprint. And they quoted about 90, we can reduce it by 99% for you if you run it in AWS. again, I think he said generally running workloads on AWS can be 460% higher than an optimized and efficient. Oh, let me quote this bit because this was important. So that was the first line about, AWS saying, we can run your AI workloads 99% more efficiently and carbon, reduce your carbon footprint by 99% if versus, I presume, running it in your own data center, your own laptop or whatever. And then he said, running workloads on AWS can be 460% higher than, and this was Mark's actual slide, higher, and I'll quote this because it's important, higher than an optimized and efficient on-prem platform in the right data center and location. Now tell me, David, how many of those do you know that we have and that we know of? Right? It's optimized, efficient, on-prem, it's in the right data center and the right location.
Yeah.
That's not asking for much, is he, Mark? But
no. There's a unicorn standing next to it.
Yeah. Big and right next to the big massive elephant in the room. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. And again, I was maybe half asleep. I did not pick up on that, but thankfully, that's what my phone is for. I took lots of lots of pictures from the slides, and then I managed to pick that up in retrospect. Because again, I would have challenged that had I actually picked up on it at the time. And there was a lot of, I think he was, again, all credit to him. He was kind of putting up a lot of details on the slides, and he's like what I dug up on Microsoft and Amazon and blah blah blah, and that was all good. And I think the anecdotal one for me was when he said he called Werner Vogels, which is the CTO at AWS, as absolute BS. Was the slide that he put up, and I'll show that to you. Hopefully, if you're watching this, I'm going to put it up on the screen somewhere by now. So that was when he was doing, I think when Werner Vogels was doing his keynote at the last AWS Summit or something. But yeah, so that bit that I quoted was just a howler for me. That was kind of, so it's not that easy. You're asking me to, you want me to do it, but then there's all these massive hurdles that I need to, to jump over.
But however, as you rightly say, when he was calling out Microsoft and calling out the others, I mean, it's so easy to kind of read an ESG report and believe that they're going to get to zero, by 2030 or whenever it is, and to actually have a lot of that kind of like we've got recognizing that we've got greenwashing on steroids going on here, and that really is a problem that's being covered up is it's interesting and a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah, I mean, those I don't know about you, but I think those prerequisites were quite a lot. He was asking for quite a lot. Optimized, efficient, on-prem platform in the right data center and in the right location as well. Wow. Yeah. Okay. That's a lot of prerequisites. Yeah. But anyway, so there was something else that he mentioned about using cost as a proxy. I didn't really get that much, but that was quite interesting. He kind of had a slide comparing company A versus company B. But I don't know what the conclusion was. Did you pick up on that at all?
Well, no, and I think it's because there are in some of those ESG reports there are people who actually use cost as a proxy for the greenness of their data center
okay approach. Right
which that's another kind of fascinating uncovering, as it were.
Okay, so here's the conclusion that I picked up on. This is actually from his slide again, and I quote this bit: "Cloud is not the problem." That's what his conclusion slide said. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all I need to hear. We can actually end the recording right here, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then he said, "Green ops is not a cost to your business." I would beg to differ, because even if you just start doing FinOps, which can lead on to cost efficiencies, and obviously therefore you're not running as many workloads and so on, or you're at least running them in a more efficient way. If you need to involve any experts or tools, and certainly consultants like him, that will cost me a lot of money, because I need the consultant. I don't have the expertise to do all this. to run green ops in my data center. So David Linthicum's convinced me to repatriate. I've cloud repatriated into the data center, and now Mark Butcher saying to me, I need to run in a green, efficient way. So I'm hiring a lot of consultants to help me out on this move, aren't I, David? Hey, if you are enjoying the content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That would really help me out. Thank you. So onto the next one, which was a guy called Carl Havard, I think. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Nscale. And his was, I think, the most probably neutral presentation, which was how to approach the era of Gen AI. So one of the things that he actually, and again, I think I was maybe half asleep through this one. Maybe I slept through the whole thing. Right about the point where the summits kind of split up. One of the quotes I picked up on was, he said, this is when how to get access to Gen AI. So he mentioned kind of various other things, but he said public clouds is probably the easiest and default option, right, to how to do generative AI. So his presentation was flying in the face of really what everybody else was saying in the summit. And then he said, and the other quote for on-prem, he said, if you can afford them. That was the quote on his slide. So in order to do generative AI, guys, best place is the public cloud, and Nscale are proving that. They're saying that. And then on-prem was if you can afford it. So again.
And I mean, this is, I mean, I can totally get, him laying it out in that way, because obviously we know that there's, with NVIDIA and Intel, and, there's a huge demand for GPUs to handle the AI, the Gen AI and data, large language models and the like. And it's like an arms race in GPU processors. And obviously, AI comes along, whether my data center is mine or a cloud provider's. Suddenly I need to actually have all those faster processors with GPUs and the like in clusters and
exactly
to do my AI stuff. And like you were saying a little while ago when we were talking about running our own data center, the stuff goes to out of date, and I need to invest in new kits to kind of improve my data center to handle the new stuff.
And also I think and 2024 is probably perceived as the kind of the year of proof of concepts and pilots for AI and generative AI by lots of enterprises. And I bet if somebody did some research and statistics, probably 90%, 95% of those were actually probably done in a public cloud, because you can actually stand them up much more quickly and much more easily, use the PaaS layer as well of the cloud, and indeed even some easy to get hold of services in the public cloud from Microsoft Azure's AI and OpenAI sort of solutions, as well as AWS's Bedrock and as a playground for testing stuff and so on as well.
That's one of the kind of like key advantages of cloud that's been there right from the start. In terms of actually, I want to try something out. I can do it in the cloud and test it out, and if it works, great, I do some more, and if it doesn't, I come back and I move on to the next thing and try something different. And that kind of way of reducing the barrier to entry for an organization or for a particular thing that I'm trying to do, it's one of the key reasons why cloud is such a great approach.
Yeah, indeed. And then I think I picked up on sort of towards the end of Carl's presentation, he said demand transparency on genuine sustainability credentials. Now, Mark just told us that there is no genuine sustainability credentials because everybody's lying as far as the hyperscalers are concerned. They're all liars when it comes to green ops. And now Carl is saying, go to the very same liars and ask them for genuine sustainability credentials. Me, just a, lowly old, ABC Limited, ABC Inc., go to AWS and Azure and ask them, demand and knock on their door and, demand that they give you genuine sustainability credentials. Okay, yeah, nice one, Carl.
Going to be tricky.
Yeah, going to be slightly tricky, exactly. Okay, so David, what were kind of your final thoughts? Let's kind of draw some conclusions here.
Well, I mean, I got a lot of value out of it because I think the deep green story was interesting. There was lots of good stuff about optimization and doing it right. The kind of slightly anti-cloud kind of thread. I don't get. I think we've got any organization has got choices, and one of the things about the current environment is that I've got loads of choice, and when I'm actually talking thinking about doing a transformation of my organization, which every business should be thinking in terms of being in a permanent state of reinvention. If you're not actually competing with yourself to do better, you're in trouble because someone else is doing it. Your competitor is doing the clever thing with artificial intelligence, whatever it is. So you need to be thinking in terms of competing with yourself. And when it comes to those applications, then sometimes it's going to work better on a particular cloud. Sometimes it's going to work better on another cloud. Sometimes it might work better if you do it in on premise. But it's a matter of actually thinking in terms of where's the value going to come from, and actually making the right technology choice based on that particular thing, rather than starting with cloud and saying cloud's always the answer. We've got loads of choices. That's the way it should be.
Indeed, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think, like I said, the conclusion for me, the verdict overall for me on the summit was that it was, very well organized. I like all the, there was lots of. I'll try and maybe flash some of this stuff later on the screen for you guys to see some of the content and so on that was made available. And I certainly put in my sort of notes that I took. That split in, like I said, in the summit really sort of happened early on, and then we were kind of down the not the hyperscaler and public cloud path, but we were down that sort of just green energy, efficiency, sustainability sort of path, which really encompasses everybody, not just the hyperscaler data centers, but everybody's data center. I agree with you in terms of that kind of sort of anti-cloud, sort of thing was a little bit sort of disappointing, but like I said, that did disappear as far as I was concerned quite quickly. The choice aspect of it that you mentioned, I think that is important, that we need to bear that in mind. I'm all for green, but I really need to see those realistic figures. I need to see proper proven. I don't care who the organization is or the standards committee is, whatever that kind of gives me those, but I would need to see those. And then the other thing is, for me, we're all passionate about a lot of these, subjects and topics, but we need to be objective at the end of the day when it comes to what is actually going to work. What are we talking about here exactly? It's no good throwing out all these stats and, and opinions, subjective opinions about things. We need to be objective in our approach, and let's be a little bit more open about that. Let's be a little bit more honest about, kind of our approach and be more objective about it.
I'd agree with that. I'd also like to add the fact that the microphone on every seat thing actually added to the conference. That there was some really good Q&A dialogue after every presentation, and that was good.
And a lot of pushback as well. We did notice that certain keynote presenters actually started kind of pedaling back a little bit on some of their presentations and thoughts and and content that they put out.
Linthicum in particular, when he was challenged by the Leaf Cloud guy.
Yeah. I won't go into the details, but there was a whole bunch of, maybe I'll put it in the description of the video, but there was a whole bunch of pushback on that from the audience. And like I said, this lends itself not necessarily against sort of David or anything, but it's just lending itself towards that objectivity. We need that sort of objective approach to how we look at all these topics, and I think that's the only way you're going to really get any anything productive. There's a lot of screaming and shouting and so on, but that's just subjective views and being passionate about something, and so on. But we need a little bit more objectivity. Okay, well, David, thank you so much for your input and thoughts. I really appreciate it. All the links for David and what he kind of gets up to, and all the recent stuff and the announcements and news from him as well, and all the latest developments on what he's been doing will be in the description of the video. Please do check out David's website and all the details that I'll provide, and feel free to connect with David. I'm sure he'll welcome that and welcome your comments as well. Talking of comments, we'd love to hear about your comments on this space and what's going on in the sort of the green sustainability, public cloud, all that sort of stuff. We'd love to hear from you. Are you guys experiencing this sort of thing? Do you have similar challenges in your data centers, or migrating to cloud, or thinking about cloud repatriation, God forbid? But if you have any comments in this space, that would be fantastic for you to actually contribute. So do drop some comments in the video. If you found this video useful, please do support it in the usual ways, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to support me. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. Bye for now.